Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I am flying solo here within the SCU studios. It's Ravens week, folks, and I had made this proclamation with Brian E. Roach. Can't be with me today for the show, unfortunately. But we had said, me and Brian said, we are so back. But me and Brian are one of the two people, maybe some of the only persons out there who felt that the Steelers were so back. They had been on the cusp of things for so long, and you see what it's like when you finally get some talent that surrounds a stable quarterback position. That's right. This game, it's for all the marbles. It's the first AFC North division game for the Pittsburgh Steelers this season, but the Baltimore Ravens already have had their run-ins with other AFC North teams to this point, and it's really tough to try and even go backwards and compare past teams, present teams, because these two iterations of the Ravens and Steelers, I mean, this could be like one of the more, what do you want to say, serious games here, because the last time these two teams faced off, for example, Mason Rudolph was playing in the rain in Baltimore in a final Week 18 game where Baltimore basically decided to take a bye week off. They did not get the bye week versus the Kansas City Chiefs, but they decided to rest a bunch of their players, including Lamar Jackson, who's only faced the Pittsburgh Steelers 4 times. Lamar Jackson is 1-3. When he has faced the Pittsburgh Steelers. You'd think that, they would face each other a lot more frequently, being within the division. And the Baltimore Ravens, well, they have a little bit of a head start here in the AFC North, despite the Steelers leading with an overall record, because the Steelers haven't had any AFC North games yet. So this one's like really important right out the gate, right after the Steelers had a very, tough physical game on the road with the Washington Commanders. Looked like a very solid performance all the way around for Pittsburgh. And then the Ravens, they just faced the Cincinnati Bengals. It was a Thursday night game, so they have a little bit of a mini bye. The Bengals, they dropped 2 games. They're 0-2 so far, and then a third game in the AFC North. Of course, we know the Ravens with, or I should say the Cleveland Browns with Jameis Winston at the helm after the change with Deshaun Watson getting hurt. They were able to put up 29 points and win 29-24 in Cleveland. So the Ravens are 2-1. It would behoove the Steelers. This is really big. Like, they need this game more than anything. It's like, if there's ever one that you don't want to drop, you don't want to drop it in your division. You don't want to drop it in the conference, and especially against a team that's hot on your heels. They are 7-3, the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers sitting at 7-2. They could get a nice little cushion here if they were to jump to 8-2, and the Ravens were to leave Acrisure Stadium on Sunday, 7-4. Just a little bit of some housekeeping notes as I was flashing that old George Pickens picture. Perfect. That was from like week 5 last season. Like I said, even with Kenny Pickett, they were able to beat up on Marlon Humphrey, and the Ravens defense isn't, your father's Ravens defense either, where the Steelers, their defense has always been solid. They've always played tough. These could be close games, but the over-under, the odds makers are sitting here with the Ravens at -3. I don't disagree with that. We're talking about the league's top scoring offense, I believe. I'm about to dig into that in a second, but the Ravens at -3. The over-under at 48, however, is where it's at, because the Pittsburgh Steelers nearing, not quite at 30 points per game, but over the last few. Of course, we know that against both New York teams, they got to that mark, and then 28 against Washington most recently. The Steelers, though, are second in points allowed, 16.2. The Baltimore Ravens are first in points scored at 31.8. Something has got to give between these two dynamics: Ravens offense, Steelers defense. And then, of course, we're saying who's down, who's out. Well, we think that the Steelers offense may have found some lifeblood with with Russell Wilson, as the quarterback over his last 3 starts, giving a little bit, maybe not even a little bit, maybe a lot of bit of a spark. He's already got 6 touchdown passes in those 3 games, half as many games that Justin Fields appeared in, with only the 5 touchdown passes and only the 1 interception, and that was a deep ball, basically a punt. The Steelers, they may have unlocked some of their playmakers. They might be able to rely on somebody other than, well, the game wrecker, TJ Watt. Of course, he'll be roaming the field. He'll be looking for Lamar Jackson as per the usual. So let's dig some more into some of these various numbers. The Ravens are 3-2 on the road this season, are 6-4 against the spread, whereas the Steelers are 7-2 against the spread. They almost like the same exact record. They do have the one home loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Both of the Steelers' losses, by the way, coming by only a margin of 3 points apiece. The Ravens are pretty close too. They've lost to the Kansas City Chiefs by 7, the Raiders by 3. It's more or less who the Ravens have actually dropped some of these games to, the Raiders. And then the third game, of course, 5 points to the Cleveland Browns, all one-score games that they're pretty close in now. The Baltimore Ravens, the defense, like I was saying, not quite what you're expecting. 25.3 points per game allowed. That's 25th in the National Football League, as opposed to 23.9 points scored by the Steelers offense. They're just on the outside of being in the top 10. They are currently 12th in the league offensively for points scored. The two teams, the way they rank offensively, passing and rushing, the Ravens are third passing in the top rushing team in the National Football League. Of course, Derrick Henry, the big free agent signing. Believe Derrick Henry has scored in every single game this season, sometimes multiple times in each game. So third and first. The Steelers are 26th passing, 8th running. So they're starting to get back to having that identity as a rushing football team. But just to put this into perspective, the Ravens are averaging 182 rushing yards per game. The Steelers are at 138, ranked 8th. They're almost 50 yards behind. And yes, I know, I let Brian get away with one the other day. The maths with Brian, maths with Joe. That is actually where it's at. The rest of the math, though, the Ravens defensively, they're bottom in the National Football League. They're giving up almost 300 passing yards per game at 294. The Steelers are 19th at 215. Defensively, both teams are stout against the run. So that means Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, two Bama boys in the backfield, battering ram type running backs. Well, those battering ram type running backs, they might struggle a little bit. The Ravens are first. Now, some of this, statistically, when I bring it up the numbers, is because teams get behind against Baltimore and then have to throw the ball. So that's why you've got this big lopsided, like they've give up 73 rushing yards per game, but the teams abandon the run and then throw the football against Baltimore, and that's why they're in the bottom two. Some of it is some garbage time stuff. Pittsburgh Steelers only giving up about 87 against the run. I think that's more of a realistic number when you come to think about how the game script flows. Lamar Jackson, reigning NFL MVP, 2,669 yards passing this year. Nice number. That's why I stumbled on my words. 24 passing touchdowns. So, like, Lamar Jackson, he was the MVP last year. I've been on record saying, I was like, how does he become MVP with only 24 passing touchdowns last year? He's already got 24 now. 10 games into the season, he played 16 last year. So it's kind of interesting. And on far fewer attempts so far, far fewer yards. I don't know if it was just like a down passing year or just, they did go through 60-plus quarterbacks in the National Football League last year. The injury bug was everywhere. But Jackson also, he runs the football like no other. He doesn't take that many sacks. He's only been brought down 13 times thus far this season. He's only committed 2 interceptions, so he hasn't been committing any turnovers. He's completing 69.1% of his passes, so he's been very proficient in this Baltimore Todd Monken offense, which is also new this year. Also new as defensive coordinator Zach Orr, who has been catching a lot of criticism. They brought Dean Pease in a few weeks ago. There hasn't been any major changes, but let's see if they've installed anything or had some extra time with the mini bye week to maybe better prepare for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh, Lamar Jackson's also running it on the ground too, and that was the other thing I was looking for. Rushing so far, he only has 2 rushing touchdowns, but he does have 91 carries for 538 yards. But the Pittsburgh Steelers have not been giving up yards to many mobile quarterbacks. Immediately you think of Lamar Jackson, a lot of people start to think, well, this guy's like a running back. He's not a quarterback. Well, it's not necessarily true. I've never wanted to put him in that kind of position or downplay his ability to extend plays, make plays, find players down the field, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the Steelers have had their way with Jackson in the past. I would expect them to maybe have this same way in this game. This may be the best team that they play all season, the way that Baltimore has been playing. I want to give them the proper respect, at least the best offense. Now, the Commanders certainly were. Rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels, he's a mobile quarterback as well, but so is Daniel Jones. Now, Aaron Rodgers doesn't get around the way that he used to. Anthony Richardson didn't play like a full game. Bo Nix was capable of moving around as need be. So there's been some different quarterbacks, some quarterbacks that could actually get up and run around. Jackson will definitely be the most polished and most elusive of that group that the Steelers may face this season. But make no bones about it, the Steelers have been able to contain these other quarterbacks. They've been able to come away with 7 victories, and it's not just because we're borderline on this defense being elite. We're talking about whether or not this defense could be in the same talking category as 2008. Now, 2008 is legendary, so we're not there yet. 2010 followed, 2005 preceded it. They might start to slot themselves into this area, particularly. We got to see how this next stretch of games against all these AFC North teams ends up. To get a solid grasp on just how this game may play out, Joey Porter Jr. had a big game last year. It was really the most time he got to see on the field. It was a coming home party for him. The Steelers secondary is going to have to be ready. The multiple safeties that they have. No more Terrell Edmunds. I know we didn't really mention him on the show, but on the transaction wire, he'd been released recently. Talking with Flash, I said, oh, there goes our sweet prince, right? Jamal Agnew just signed, though, with the Steelers. There must be something that Danny Smith and the special team sees that they want yet another return guy. And, you know, John Harbaugh was a special teams coach, so there's always some type of shenanigans. There could be some other shenanigans when it comes to the special teams. Not trying to jump all over, though. I want to jump into the injury report before getting to the real keys of this game. It's probably going to be a shorter episode here, not only because I'm flying solo, folks, but also we got a lot of work to do because then there's going to be a Thursday night game following this. And so, there's only so much I could throw at you. There's only so much you could watch or listen to. There's only so much that content that we could produce. So before we actually jump into that, I'll give you the map first. This is the Sunday 1 o'clock window on CBS, the red area. That's right. It's the entire country, unless you're like in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Tennessee, part of Indiana with the Indianapolis market, Michigan and Chicago areas, and then down into Florida and a little bit in the New York market there. Damn near everybody. A little bit of the West Coast too, Reno, Sacramento, Vegas, as you can see. Everybody in the red. This is the game of the week. This is the one that everybody wants to see. Is this Russell Wilson's is he going to continue being unbeaten? He's 3-0. Is this going to be where Lamar Jackson finally gets his spoils against the Steelers team that's had his way or had their way with him in the past? So there's all kinds of storylines running into this one. The Steelers, they're looking healthy and then they're not looking healthy. We already know he's going to show up a little later on this list, but Alex Highsmith's going to be ruled out. He's been huge in some of these Ravens games. He's going to be sorely missed, but further down the list here, we see that Nick Herbig has had 2 full practices with the hamstring, should be healthy, should be coming back. Now, Alex Highsmith, we surmise that obviously he's not going to be ready for this one. He won't be ready for the short week either. He's going to miss probably 2 games, maybe even a third. Really big deal when we're talking about stopping the run. Hopefully Preston Smith could get up to speed here because we know that Nick Herbig, he hasn't been playing now, but he could get after the quarterback, he could pass rush. But can he bring down somebody like Derrick Henry? That's something we haven't yet seen, but it's going to be good to at least have him back for at least a breather for TJ Watt at the very minimum. It's going to be all hands on deck kind of thing. We've seen the Steelers. I was talking to somebody in the comments about this. I didn't want to jump in with the keys, but it's on the top of my head right now. When Brian Flores was here as one of the linebackers coaches, we've seen zero blitz type schemes work against Lamar Jackson. He brought that over from the Miami Dolphins. We'll see if that's still like a feather in the cap. We haven't really seen the Steelers do any zero blitz. I may have seen it once this season, and I'm struggling to see exactly who they threw it at because they don't usually blitz all the time anyways. But somebody will be tasked with roaming and following around Lamar Jackson, whether that's an extra safety, that dimebacker role. You've got Cam Sutton back. You got Beanie Bishop, who's been playing well, although he does get targeted a lot as a rookie. Joey Porter. But on the injury report, not the most promising thing here. Dante Jackson's listed here as the third player on this list. He was a DNP on Wednesday, limited with the hamstring on Thursday. Hopefully he could be upgraded to full participant on Friday because that's a big one. I know that we're looking at Corey Trice coming back from his hamstring to full participant Thursday, but Corey Trice isn't a guy who has a whole lot of experience. You can't just toss him out there. James Pierre could be a sitting duck against like a Zay Flowers. Even Deontay Johnson, who's now a Raven, but didn't get a whole lot of playing time. Maybe that was just because he doesn't know the plays yet. Maybe he's playing too much diva. There was a little bit of that coming out too. But on the Steelers side of things with wide receivers too, Van Jefferson pops up on the report limited with a quadricep as well. That could preclude to maybe more playing time for either Calvin Austin or Mike Williams, or one of these guys playing special teams like Ben Skoranek, for example. Najee Harris is on this. He's a full participant after sitting out Wednesday with the ankle. Let's see. Alex Highsmith, we've already mentioned, is going to be ruled out. Tomlin said just as much in his press conference on Tuesday. Isaac Seumalo had a veteran day of rest. Michael Pruitt sat for a day and then with a knee, but also had a veteran day of rest. Cam Hayward's been getting rest as well. Cam Hayward played out of his mind. They're going to need him for this one. He's not going to need to practice too much. Getting a little thin at corner, though. I know CJ Henderson hasn't been out there, but it's a veteran corner that could be another one of these guys that sees some playing time, but he's not going to if he has a neck issue. He was a DNP on Thursday. Jaylen Warren shows up as a DNP with a back injury. Hopefully that's not too concerning, and he's able to participate in the game on Sunday. For the Baltimore Ravens, it gets a little bit interesting here. There's not as many starters that are in jeopardy, and they've had a little bit of extra time off to where they kind of get to lick their wounds because of that Thursday night game, right? So when we look at the Baltimore Ravens and we look at their side of the injury report, Jalen Armour-Davis, full participant, after showing up on an injury report with a knee. That's a reserve corner. He's going to play behind Brandon Stevens, Marlon Humphrey. Then you have Kyle Hamilton. He's been trying to work his way back up. He rolled his ankle. It was kind of nasty, too. It was almost kind of Alex Highsmith, like in a way that he has kind of went down on a trying to make a cut against the Bengals on that Thursday night. They set him for Wednesday. He was limited on Thursday. So just like Dante Jackson, we'll have to see what his Friday participation's like. Now, Lamar Jackson showed up on here with a knee. I don't think there's any chance in hell that Lamar Jackson doesn't play in this game. It's probably more precautionary than anything. Travis Jones, ankle limited. Isaiah Likely went from limited with the hamstring to full participant. He's one of two dangerous tight ends on this Ravens offense when paired with the veteran Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews had been putting up the biggest numbers this season after, getting injured last year and working his way back. Maybe age is showing. Maybe he's just it's a little slow, knocking off the rust. There's other options in this offense now. So, but still, ever the threat. You could never take away from somebody who, for a long time, was one of Lamar Jackson's favorite targets in the Ravens offense. Arthur Maulet, former Steeler, pops up on this Thursday injury report, limited with a calf injury. Brent Urban looks like he'll be coming out of concussion protocol, and Kyle Van Noy, veteran pass rusher. I made fun of him being old, 35 years old. He's one of these guys that's going to be there with like James Harrison, Clay Matthews, one of these guys that plays until they're almost 40. So don't want to poke too much fun at Kyle Van Noy because I don't want him coming after any of the Steelers or having any other ammunition as though he's listening to me. Let's talk about that Ravens defense real quick while I'm at it. Travis Jones is one of those guys on the defensive front with Broderick Washington and the newly christened Can't say it. You know what I'm trying to say. Nnamdi Madubuike, no longer Justin Madubuike. He's a guy that's a multi-millionaire with one of these big contracts that could just wreck a game. Odafe Owe, kind of one of their designated pass rushers in rotation with David Ajabo. Those guys are both solid. Roquan Smith. It's going to be a storyline because Patrick Queen was, that his tag team partner there last year. It's now Trenton Simpson with Malik Harrison kind of coming in a rotational role as need be. Simpson hasn't quite elevated to the same level that Queen once was, but still the front seven. When you add Kyle Van Noy into this mix, that's why they're good a lot of times against the run. The corners are physical, and they're willing to put their nose in where need be. Obviously, Marlon Humphrey, he's another guy who could wreck a game. Saw it happen a few years ago. I think Tomlin mentioned it in the press conference. It was an overtime game in which Juju Smith-Schuster had the ball punched out of his hands by Marlon Humphrey, kind of gave up the game. The secondary with Brandon Stevens, I feel like Stevens has always been a little bit of an overachiever, but sometimes, again, like I said about some of the Steelers guys in the post game for the Commanders, got to be lucky. Sometimes it isn't all about good. It's about luck. It's about those instincts, about guys like Robert Spillane, who I keep thinking about stopping Derrick Henry, like that freight train coming through the middle from the Titans and things. Oh, I want to see somebody like a Landon Roberts or Peyton Wilson or somebody give him a nice pop. Patrick Queen especially, right? But Brandon Stevens, Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, veteran free safety, Marlon Humphrey, and the rookie Nate Wiggins, who's been tremendous. This team even went out, acquired Tre'Davious White in a trade. The former Buffalo Bill who's struggled for years to stay healthy. He didn't really get on the field. He wasn't ready on that short week after the trade deadline. And then they still have Eddie Jackson, the timeless Eddie Jackson, former Chicago Bear. Some people feel he's washed, some people don't. But when you're throwing somebody out there with veteran experience and he's one of your additional bodies like a dime backer, an additional safety, and DB heavy sub packages, it's still something to consider. So they've got some of the names. It's just whether or not this talent hasn't mixed it together or put it quite together just yet. But they still win in games. There's nothing to really scoff at. It's just that people want to question, is it just all offense? What happens if the Ravens offense is held to like 20 points? Can their defense hold the fort down and not give up all these yards and points and whatnot? Steelers are going to have to make sure on their offensive side of the ball that they don't make any mistakes. There's a lot of guys here. You've got Zach Frazier, who's a rookie, Mason McCormick, who's a rookie, Broderick Jones, who still seems a little bit like a fish out of water at right tackle, Seumalo and Dan Moore. Dan Moore has always kind of lived up beyond expectations, I would say, in some of these games. So we got to see, like Najee last week against Washington, and also showing up on this injury report. It's a little concerning because Jaylen Warren led that game in rushing. And it's not something we really talk about much, but the Steelers, they still had, I think, let me pull it up real quick. They were around 140 yards rushing for that game. Right on the money, 43 carries, 140 yards. Jaylen Warren had 66 of those. He had a 4.7 average. He was hitting that line pretty quick. It was some of the more volume that he's seen. But Najee Harris was only at a 2.5 average on 21 carries. It's on film, and now the Ravens know how to attack it and maybe know how to limit Najee Harris. He's going to need to go out there, push the pile, and try and make at least some second and 5, third and manageable situations. Make it easier for Russell Wilson, the offensive line, and the Steelers' offense. Cordero Patterson could also be probably categorized in that same way when we're talking about the Steelers' offense versus that Ravens defense. George Pickens, they saw something, last year. We've seen it in the past where Pickens leaks free, beats Marlon Humphrey back when Geno Stone was there, beating some of these guys in the Ravens secondary. So we'll see Pickens, if he's as big of a weapon. We'll see if Mike Williams gets more involved, gets a little more snap counts in this game. Pat Freiermuth, I think, is going to be a hidden weapon here. It'll be interesting to see Roquan Smith in coverage, if he's going to be covering the tight ends. May even open up things, multiple tight end sets for Darnell Washington. Maybe even Connor Hayward, who's been kind of absent after a little bit of dropsies and not making the big plays when his number was called earlier in the season. But I wouldn't discount Connor from showing up in this game as well. Going to have to see some more Steelers making big plays. They're going to need to get the passing game going in order to back this Ravens defense away to make the run game successful. RPOs, play action, the whole 9 yards. This is going to be a slugfest. And I would be surprised if these two teams split games with one another. Generally, they're close. Chris Boswell, uncharacteristic. I did the numbers. Out of 89 games, his last 89 games, I know it seems like cherry pick, but then there were ones that were a little sooner than that, or maybe the Steelers offense was a little more prolific like 2017, where Boswell didn't have to kick field goals. You didn't have to just rely on, are you going to get in enough range so that Chris Boswell could try and make a 48-yard field goal? And he didn't attempt one last week. That was only the 5th time in the last 89, almost 90 games. It doesn't include, those are the games he's active, doesn't include when he was injured. But it's almost like 90 games where it's like only 5 games. Now, that's not including extra points. I'm just saying field goal attempts. So Boswell did not even attempt a field goal against the Commanders. But he may be called upon a little bit more, and especially against his counterpart, Justin Tucker, who's a world-class kicker as well. Ravens just, they are kind of stacked the whole way around. Their kick returner is going to be Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell, the 2 running backs, Tylan Wallace, Zay Flowers is an alternate as a punt returner. Doesn't get as much duty as his snap shares have gone up in year 2 in the National Football League. He's a very fine player. Now, Baltimore, offensively, you take a look at their depth chart here and going down the line, Tyler Linderbaum, a guy that many of us were after a few drafts ago. Steelers ended up with Zach Frazier. Totally cool with how that played out. Linderbaum, I believe, a Pro Bowler as a rookie. He's going to have to get out in front, maybe get second level, as will some of the other offensive linemen, the interior guys for the Ravens. Patrick McCarry, it's been there forever. Daniel Falele, who's like listed at 380 pounds. Interior guy. Maybe make him move his feet a little bit. We'll see if Cam Hayward gets up against one of these guys and pushes them around. Ronnie Stanley, Roger Rosengarten, a rookie on the outside. Stanley's been playing down a little bit, Rosengarten, but they have enough here to get it done, and they work well within their scheme. They work well as a unit, so I don't want to just say, oh, they should beat these guys like a drum, because you saw with the Commanders, as long as you got the scheme there, it don't matter if you have a bunch of new guys or backups as your edge guys. Everyone pitching in a hand to try and slow down TJ Watt. We all know why that's always important, because Watt is capable of coming off this edge and getting the football on the ground, making things get loose, shaking things free. And the Ravens, Jackson, like I said, isn't loose with the ball, but he is loose himself. He'll move around and everything like that. So they make use of a fullback quite frequently. Patrick Ricard, he's another load that comes through the hole there, with Derrick Henry then following after that like a wrecking ball. It's kind of crazy. By the way, Henry's already topped 1,000 yards rushing. He's actually topped 1,100 yards rushing. He's at 1,120 already and 12 touchdowns on the season. He's on pace to break. Well, I don't know, quite break. He's still got 7 games left. He did run for 2,000 that 1 year, 2027 back in 2020 with 17 touchdowns, but he might top 20 touchdowns rushing. He's going to top his second best season, which was at 1,540, without a doubt. And he could get close. Maybe not against the Steelers, though, and that's what you're really hoping for. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have to bottle him up. Change of pace, guys. Justice Hill, he's a little more proficient at catching the football out of the backfield. Keaton Mitchell has just returned to this team after the injury that had him out for close to a year. And then as your wide receivers, they've got a whole bunch of bodies. Just bunches of them. Zay Flowers, he can get deep. Rashad Bateman is a fast player. It doesn't really stand out to you. Tylan Wallace, Nelson Aguilar, Deontay Johnson. I know none of us would like anything more than to see Deontay Johnson get a choice encounter with one of these Steelers DBs who then knocks him backwards or strips the ball from him. It would be nice, but I'm not going to count on it. And then there's Devontae Walker as well, another young man that, one of these middle or late round picks that you're hoping maybe, Steelers keep an eye on them. And I hate the Ravens on different levels than some teams I dislike, because there's so many players here. And as an organization, too, they do things that are very similar to the Steelers' way, the Steelers' process, the type of players that, could get down and dirty and stick their nose in there, a hand in the pile, and just play some smash mouth football. There's so many players they picked up, like a Linderbaum or a Kyle Hamilton, that Zay Flowers. And you're just like, oh, man, really? That guy's going to be a Baltimore Raven? So really the keys to the game for the Pittsburgh Steelers is to not let Derrick Henry run wild. No Hulk Hogan stuff here. No running wild, brother. Can't let Derrick Henry run wild. Can't let Lamar. You got to contain Lamar Jackson, okay? Lamar in the pocket, he should be dangerous. That's where all quarterbacks should be dangerous. But for some reason, I feel like when you could keep Lamar, try and keep him on a schedule, if you could put some pressure on him and just make sure he doesn't scoot loose and get those, it's a 3rd and 8 and all of a sudden he gets free and runs for a first down. He's going to be good for like 1 or 2 of those. But hopefully it's not late in the game. Hopefully it's not in a major critical time of the game. And if it happens, it happens. You learn a lesson and then you can move forward. That's really when it comes to bottling up the Ravens offensively, but the Steelers on offense, they're still going to need an identity running the football. And in order to do that, like I said earlier, Russell Wilson, hopefully he could drop it in the bucket. Hopefully he can find his new target, Mike Williams. Hopefully Williams can open up things with George Pickens, and the Steelers offense cannot be one-dimensional in this game. They must absolutely take it to the Baltimore Ravens. I'm hoping another key here is that Mike Tomlin just doesn't get too caught up in his feels. He had the black Air Force Ones on last week. You knew that he meant business. This week, I'm sure they're coming right back with them again. Man, was that just aggressive on the fake punt call. Some of the other calls, 4th down and whatever, the cojones that were on Tomlin. I hope these guys aren't too drunk off of their success from last week. I think it's going to be a little different because they are playing at home. This is the Baltimore Ravens, another formidable challenger, and their first division game. So I do think that they're going to be on point here. I don't think there's anybody. It's not like they're going to be overlooking the Ravens as a trap game. If anything, if they win this game, I'd be more worried about going to Cleveland on the short week and looking at a Browns team. Who knows what they're going to end up doing this weekend. They play at New Orleans against the Saints, but you look down or you play down to some of those teams. I don't think it's anything like that in this game. I think you're going to see the best come out of everyone. I hope that some of the players that were on the injury report, I hope they end up being able to participate. I hope Jaylen Warren is healthy, in particular, Dante Jackson, and that'll do it for me, folks. Once again, we appreciate you watching or listening wherever you may be, supporting Steel City Underground here on our show and also over at steelcityunderground.com. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It's about all that I have. Thank you. I know a lot of times we say our 2%ers because we have some longer shows and people hang out a little later. Hopefully I didn't jump around too much. I think I caught all of the key areas that I wanted to when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens, when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, how many times do we have to say that the Ravens, they put up yards, they put up points, and it's just going to have to be, let's see what this Steelers defense is really made of, because we've seen some cracks, right? We've definitely seen some cracks. The Ravens have put up over 500 yards twice this season as an offense. They've put up 400 yards 4 other times. They got real close against the Broncos too at 396, the Bengals at 389. In fact, they haven't had fewer than 383 yards offensively. That's offensive to me. And there's only one game, and that was against the Bengals on Thursday night. The Bengals actually held them to 99 yards rushing. And if it wasn't for all those penalties, actually Cincinnati should have beaten the Baltimore Ravens. They may have shown Pittsburgh, of all people, the Bengals in their defense may have shown the Steelers what they need to do. But more importantly, I think that Bengals offense showed that the Ravens may be susceptible. And now that you've got Russell Wilson playing at top level, like old form Russell Wilson, you've got some different weapons, protect the football, win the turnover battle. And I think we'll be looking forward to a Steelers victory. Yes, I feel confident. Yes, I feel bullish. Have I been wrong before? Never, folks. I'm always right. My name is Joe Kuzma. Once again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, leave a rating or review wherever you may be watching or listening from. And until next time, we encourage everyone out there in Steelers Nation, behave yourselves, or yins selves. Be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.